Alright, now I'm gonna go through a bunch of crazy temptation experiences I've had. I'm also gonna go through how I developed a fear that I was gonna end up in hell because of how many times I was falling, and explain a few things about that subject. And I'm also going to talk about how I was ministered to by the Father as well as angels. And I'll be ending this video off very close to when I was coming to my perfection. So yeah, I ended up getting a lot of different types of crazy temptations. I never thought this was going to happen to me. In the Bible, we see Satan literally tempt Jesus. Like, Jesus had dialogue with him. I never experienced temptations like that before. When I was a slave to sin, before I was delivered in that July 26th, the temptations would just be compelling to do it. I'd give in. After receiving power to say no, Satan really had to start getting crafty. There were natural types of temptations, such as just getting hammered for hours. I would go to bed, and between like 11 p.m. all the way to the next morning, 8 a.m., I'd be just getting attacked to not obey the instruction. Don't obey the instruction. Don't obey the instruction. If I stopped obeying the instruction, it was lust, and just filth in my mind, and then I'd try and fight. I'd be wrestling and fighting all night. And I'd try my best not to sin. And at first, when this happened to me, I was falling into sin. Like, it was just happening. And Jesus really had to help me. And the first time I resisted all the way through, I experienced Satan leave. 8 a.m., it was around 8 a.m. in the morning, all the temptations left, everything was gone, it was like back to normal, and I was given supernatural strength to go about my day. After that happened once, I believed, I understood, I was like, whoa, this is what I'm supposed to do, and this is what the scripture says, to submit unto God, resist the devil, and he will flee. I physically experienced that. I just didn't realize it was going to take 9 hours. So after that, because I had a hope and I had an expectation now, before I was just resisting and just hoping I don't sin, and resisting and didn't really know what to do, ended up falling. Now I knew the rules of the game, so I was able to play by those rules. And the rule that I was missing was just hope and expectation that Satan was going to flee and Jesus was going to deliver me. So I started practicing that, and I started overcoming, and eventually that season ended. In between this time, I still had a whole bunch of other types of crazy attacks that I would have never expected. I started getting attacked through witchcraft. And what I mean by this is, I was sitting down in my room one time and I don't remember what I was doing. But all of a sudden, I feel something like a sponge or slime just smear on the side of my face. Yes, physically, I feel something like slime or a sponge with slime on it just smear on my face. I react like, what the ew, like, what is this? And then all of a sudden, my mind starts getting pounded with perverted thoughts, and I ended up falling into sin. This happened a second time. There's another time I was in my room. I don't remember what I was doing. I may have been maybe I wasn't praying. I don't know what I was doing. But I was standing this time, and I felt something like a bucket of slime just drop onto my head and went through my body, went down to my bowels. I dropped on the ground and got pounded with perverted thoughts yet again, and I ended up falling. I know that I had an experience before where Jesus led me out and gave me instructions when I was getting hammered at, and I obeyed, and I saw deliverance. But this time around, I guess it just didn't come to mind. I just, those two times, I got completely bamboozled and dropped. I never experienced this before, and I actually have reason to believe that those could have been human beings. Those could have been witches and warlocks sending that to attack me and to lead me into sin. I ended up finding out more like in the medium portion of my walk how real witches and warlocks and agents of Satan are. They can operate just like demons. But that's for a completely different video and a completely subject. But the point is, yeah, I ended up experiencing that slime thing, and I did end up getting instruction on how to handle those bombardments, which I'm going to come to a little bit closer to the end of this video. Also, something else that's crazy worth noting about the slime thing. My closest brother, he prayed for me months later after I got slimed, and Jesus showed him the dried slime on my back. I never told him anything. I didn't tell him the testimony. The other brother who was praying with him, I didn't tell these guys anything. And my brother, Jesus showed it to him. He described it to me. And then I told him, hey, this is what that's from. This is what happened to me. So this stuff is real. The spiritual is real. Like, this stuff is real, guys. I also had other temptations. These were night attacks, and this was from a particular demon, a demon I named Blue Guy. He looked a lot like the teleporting mutant from that Mutant series, with those youth that run around. There's a guy who has claws, and another guy who shoots lasers from his eyes and stuff. But yeah, he looked a lot like this guy, and it's interesting because I was getting attacked at night, and what would happen is I'd be sleeping, and I'd get woken up, and I wouldn't realize that I'm fully awake yet. And usually I would get attacked in a way where I have thoughts coming to my mind that have absolutely nothing to do with lust, but my body would be getting stimulated at the same time, and then slowly the demons would try and present the lustful thoughts and lead me into sin. This one was a doozy. I ended up overcoming this through Jesus sometime afterwards. It happened to me 2, maybe 3 times. And then Jesus showed me the demon in my sleep. And then during the season when I had finally learned how to do spiritual warfare, when Jesus started leading me into doing so, that's how I ended up finally getting victory over this. I had to pray this guy away, which I'm going to go into that testimony a little bit later. That was a crazy experience. And I know another brother in that prayer group I had mentioned who actually experienced very, very similar manifestations at night, with the body just going all crazy while other thoughts are going through the head and just slowly being led into demonic actions and sin. Another type of temptation I noticed, well, it's more like really the type of demons. I noticed that this lust spirit was territorial to my house. It seemed to dwell in my house. It had some stations in my workplace. If I was at work, I used to get attacked. Sometimes I'd get attacked of just wanting to go home. And even during the time when I was out doing street preaching, which I'm going to be going to very shortly, there's a video coming up with that, there have been times I was tempted to just go home. And a temptation to go home was really that demon calling me to my room so it could attack me to lead me into lust. I started identifying this, and Jesus started showing it to me, and I had to really guard from listening to voices wanting me to just be at home. It was a territorial type spirit, but sometimes it did follow me. There was also a specific attack I had where Satan tried to literally kill me. I'm going to, again, go through that one a little bit later. That's planned for a little bit later. But the point I'm trying to make is there's territorial spirits set up in different areas, and they would tempt me in different ways. If I relocated, the spirit often had a hard time finding me. One time I went to Barbados, and it didn't find me for 2 days. Literally, I was at peace. Everything was great. And after 2 days, I had a vision where this thing appeared as an anime character. I don't even know who. It was just some random anime-like character. It grabbed me, and I think it was trying to force thoughts in my mind. And when I woke up from that vision, I was getting attacked with lust the entire time I was still in Barbados for the rest of the trip. There was times I'd stay over at people's houses, and I would be a lot better. So this was literally just a physical, like spiritual demon physically in a location attacking me. When I had fallen into sin, it was because I was literally giving into or being bullied by this dude. Now, I had fallen many times. I always knew why. It was unlike when I was not delivered before. When I was just in bondage, I didn't know what was going on. I was just sinning and wanted help and was crying out. This time around, every single time I messed up, I knew why. I learned something. Or I realized that I just was not doing something. So even though this was happening, and even though I was learning, demons started trying to attack me, trying to make me think that I was going to die like this, that I wasn't saved. And in this season, when I finally was learning from Jesus and working things out, Jesus had to encourage me and tell me I was not a sinner. It was not easy for me to believe that. Okay? I was not believing that because I was blatantly still doing the same sin I was doing a few years back. But Jesus was explaining to me I'm not a sinner. He kept trying to encourage me. I wasn't believing it. There was a brother I knew. He was heading the Thursday night prayer meetings from this men's prayer meeting that you've heard me mention very vaguely so far. He prayed for me, as in his spare time, not in the prayer meeting, but at home, he was just asking Jesus about me to find out what was going on. Jesus confirmed to him that what I was going through wasn't for my destruction, it was to build me up. So he actually came back and encouraged me in this, and he did this all on his own. I didn't tell him to do this. He just felt concerned for me and decided to encourage me. I still did not believe him. It wasn't until maybe a year after Jesus spoke to this brother that finally Jesus helped me understand that I wasn't actually on my way to hell. Even though in this season I was still sinning, Jesus explained to me that after I became born again, my nature changed. I did not sin. By nature, I did not sin. And this is for everyone. If you've truly been born again, by nature, you do not sin. What Jesus explained to me was, I had a demon, a Satan, an adversary, literally fighting against me and resisting me and warring against me. And Jesus told me he was teaching me how to resist. This was a resistance training. Jesus said to me that before he takes me, because he has control of when I go, he said before he takes me, he just snaps his finger, this demon's gone, I'm in a clean state. My nature was not to do any of this. And he proved it by showing me the track record. By this time, I would be 2 weeks in bliss, everything's fine, and then like clockwork, it was like a schedule, this demon would show up and all of a sudden I was getting attacks in my mind. Jesus explained to me, I just have not been doing very well in being consistent in resisting the attacks in this season of temptation. So this really encouraged me because I actually found out who I was. I was finally able to divide what was going on and realize my true identity in Jesus. I didn't sin. That was not my practice. The reason why I was stumbling and falling and just messing up was because I was listening to this demon that Jesus was teaching me to not listen to. On top of what I explained here about this whole fear about going to hell business, before I was even delivered, Jesus had showed me that since I was born again, my destination was heaven. Like that was his plan for me. I did actually die once, and I didn't know I had died. I'll tell you the story. I was laying down in my bed, and this was back in 2009. Again, this was before the major deliverance, but this was after I received the deliverance for the 2 weeks. I was laying down in my bed. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, so I think I woke up. I looked at the time. And then I was asking Jesus a question. I was asking God a very, very personal question about himself. My heart seized up, and then I went into a vision. At least I just thought it was simply a vision. And I'm being held by this white. And when I looked down, this white would just shoot up. I couldn't look down. I couldn't move. It was almost like my soul was being held by God. I turned to my left, and it was just blackness, like a void, just black, and it was scary. There was just fear, terror, and I heard not to look that way. So I turned, and I didn't look that way. In front of me, I see a spirit that looked like my dead great-grandmother. Then I start hearing thoughts in my head to ask her the question that I just asked God. I didn't have the scriptures come to mind of not asking the dead questions. I didn't have anything like that come to mind. I wasn't even thinking along those lines. I just refused to ask the question because I was talking to God. Like, I'm not going to ask her a question. I was talking to God. Like, where did you even come from? And she looked weird. She looked different. She looked very youthful and like she had just woken up. It was very weird. So I was questioning if this was actually my dead great-grandmother, and the presence of God or the light that was holding me moved me closer so I was able to see. I refused to ask the question. I just sat there silent thinking to myself, yeah, I'm not asking you anything. And a white blanket came down over me, over my face, like a curtain came down. It fell from like the top right side, and I'm sitting in all white. And all of a sudden, I started forgetting everything. Like, I couldn't remember where I was before. I started having vague memories of when I was, like, 3. And I started getting a little bit frightened because I was like, hold on a second. I can't even remember where I was before. What's up? And then I woke up out of this, and I was back in the bed. My heart felt really, really, really tight. And I laid there. And then I went into another vision. And this time, this darkness was crawling across the ceiling. This vision took place inside of the room that I was in. And it was crushing my body as it was crawling across the ceiling. So I called out to Jesus, and my hand lifted up, and then that darkness split right in half, and this bright white light was shining, and then I woke up. Now, I completely cataloged this experience. I didn't understand a shred of what happened. All I knew is I was being tempted to ask that spirit a question that I was asking God, which would have been a sin. Thank God I did not do so. And I knew that I was in some white space afterwards, and I knew that there was a really dark entity, which I believe was the same tentacle thing, crawling across the ceiling, about to crush me. So anyway, I found out that in that experience I actually did die. Months later, when I was speaking to an atheist who got hit by an SUV, and while he was flying in the air, a white curtain just fell down over his face, similar to what happened to me, and he was sitting in a white room as well. Except he wasn't losing his memory. He retained everything. He was fully conscious and understood what was going on. I actually spoke to this atheist about this and explained to him that I was in the same room, a similar room to him. Difference was I was forgetting stuff he wasn't. And in case you guys, I'm not sure if any of you guys have ever heard this before, but usually people on their way to heaven don't really remember the earth, like the way that it was. That's what I was beginning to experience. People who end up going to hell retain everything. And he was retaining everything. It was like we were in a waiting room, like a pre-room of, like, before going wherever. It was really awkward. It was almost like a spiritual realm death room or something. So after speaking to this guy, that's when I realized how close to death / how dead I was. And then it made sense later on why, some months after that death experience, I was at church. I went to prayer meeting, and my brother, whose dad baptized me, his dad prayed over my chest for any hidden heart sickness, and this mist left, and I felt a cool release, and I guess I got healed of a hidden heart sickness. Everything started kind of clicking together, and I realized, oh wow, so I'm pretty sure I did die. And what's weird is because in that experience, I was also being tempted to sin. Anyway, the reason why I share all this is that was before this whole out deliverance thing regarding finally hearing Jesus' voice and following after him. The reason why I put this in here is because this whole fear of going to hell thing, even if you are stumbling and messing up, if you have the attitude of not wanting to do the sin, Jesus can use that. He can use it. You do not live in condemnation. Do not live in fear. Just simply maintain that attitude of you're going to overcome and that Jesus is delivering you. All right, so now moving on, fast forwarding back to the future here. I'm actually going to move on now to experiences I had after temptations. Now, as I mentioned before, I used to get night attacks or demons used to beat me and attempt to violate me and so on. There's times I get pulled into the supernatural realm and angels would show up and help me and try to protect me. I had a particular guardian angel. I just call him a guardian angel because that's the only terminology I really know. I'm not sure if that's a secular term or a secular religious term or not, but all I know is there was a particular angel assigned to me. He dropped his fire and started shooting fireballs at this spirit that was trying to have its way with me. It wasn't powerful enough to do anything. I felt insulted by this. I woke up and I kind of blasphemed the angel a bit. It was out of frustration. I repented of it later on, and I actually ended up praying for the angel and just prayed and asked Jesus to make it stronger and more buff and be able to handle things, which was a far better attitude. And then I found out later on that our spiritual exploits are greatly related to our angel's armor and disposition. So basically, if anyone's wondering why was this angel too weak to deal with the demon, the situation was because I wasn't actually obeying instructions properly. So angels that serve us, we actually work together with them, and that's part of the reason why obedience is so important. I actually had seen this angel drop again some other time and attack another demon that was attacking me because I had been praying for a minister who had gone to Africa and he was getting attacked with some stomach sickness. And this demon, the group of us, the men's prayer group was praying for him. I got attacked that night by a demon trying to attack my stomach, and the same angel dropped and started trying to defend me. It was really cool experiencing that. We do actually have angels fighting on our behalf. Now, what's really interesting is I prayed and asked Jesus to make this dude really buff. I never said anything to anyone about this, and one time, one of my closest brothers, he actually saw this angel. Like, he saw it around me, and he was able to describe it, and he described it to the T. I knew it was the same angel because, number one, it was massive. He had massive muscles. Number two, he described his face, and I saw this guy's face. There was one time I was resisting temptation, and I was trying my best not to sin, and resisting. The devil fled, and I went into a vision. And when I went into this vision, I looked at the ceiling in my room because I was still in my room just in the spirit, and I saw the fabric of what looked like the bottom of a robe, but there's many just layers to it. It's very difficult to describe. It's probably easier to draw. But it filled my ceiling, and I felt a hand come and hold me. It was holding my hand. It didn't actually feel human. It was a little bit scary at first. I was like, it was a very small hand, and I squeezed it, and it just, I couldn't hurt it. It didn't feel like it felt any pain. It didn't feel evil or anything, and I was pretty terrified. I looked to my left, and my wall was to my left, and I saw a projection show up, and I saw this face that was absolutely beautiful. It was a square jaw face, African American face. It had dark curly hair. Its hair was a little bit long. It was looked like it was naturally curly. And this guy had the most beautiful smile, and I felt as though it was an angel. And I saw his face move, and then a female face came, and it was almost like this female was related to him. They looked very similar, but obviously she had far more feminine features. Same beautiful smile. So this same face of the male angel, later on, this was the exact description of the face that my brother had described to me. Now, continuing with the experience, because I was still battling with demons, I dropped profanity. I was just utterly terrified, and I believe it was a demon inside of me that responded. And because of my fear and terror I was experiencing, all of this just stopped. It lifted off and just vanished. And then I lay there in my room in the spiritual realm by myself, just sitting there. So I called out to God. I called out to the Father. And when I did, everything just returned. Everything. And when it returned, I felt like there was a host of angels dropping with this robe. Now, this was awesome, but when I woke up, that's when I realized I just used profanity in the presence of God and a host of angels who just came to visit me. Jesus had comforted me by reminding me that I don't actually use profanity. I got delivered of it after I had gotten baptized, and what had happened there in the vision, that was actually a demon speaking out of my mouth. And he also comforted me regarding the whole fear I was experiencing, reminding me that most of my spiritual encounters, I was getting beat up and stuff, so I was actually traumatized. And this did help me, even though I did wish the experience went about differently. But the point is, I did experience the Father ministering to me, and angels coming and ministering to me after overcoming a temptation. And I later understood that I got to see that one time, but that's a regular thing that used to happen. And I believe this happens with all of us. I believe that when we overcome temptations, angels do come, and God himself can also come and show up. Now, later on, when I got better at resisting and obeying, I started getting perfection-type attacks. I say this because it was indirectly what I was told. Around 2015, I started getting attacked every day for a week. And the first day, I just did everything I was told to do. I did everything. I tried everything. Nothing worked. So I just gave it to Jesus, and then Jesus took care of it and moved on. Then the next day, same thing happened. Then the next day, same thing happened. I was like, I'm getting attacked every day. Like, what's up with this? The next day, same thing happened, but twice. Now, keep in mind, I was overcoming. Jesus had me. He had my back each time. I was finally really just ducking, dipping, dodging. I was doing everything that was required, and nothing worked but just giving it to Jesus and just trusting Jesus with it. When it got to 2 attacks in one day, I then prayed and said, okay, Jesus, what is going on? And I went to sleep, and I had a dream, and in the dream, I was given a message saying, if you find yourself in a loop, it's for your perfection. When that week ended, still getting attacked 2 times a day until the week ended, I had another vision where I had a demon pulled off of my back and thrusted downwards. I still had temptations after that, but that week was very different. I never experienced that before, and it ended that season. I didn't have to experience that again. One of the last major demons I was getting attacked with regarding especially masturbation, because in this season it wasn't just the lust spirit. I was getting attacked with doubts, and I had to start learning how to overcome doubts. That was the next thing that Jesus had put on my plate in this season, in the 2015 season. But specifically with this, one of the last major temptations I had gone through, sadly, was with a sister who was within my fellowship. she had a very wicked Jezebel spirit, and I'm not saying that she herself was doing wickedness. At least at the time when I was in fellowship with her, she had a really, 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 really bad spirit following her, and that spirit would attack men around her. It was really bad. And I've experienced this spirit with others in the past. I remember standing up in line and there's a girl in front of me, and it was just getting shot up with attacks. And it wasn't even the girl, it was the spirit. That girl, I knew she was giving into that spirit because of the way she was dressed. It was very inappropriate. But with my sister here, she wasn't doing anything, although I know the spirit had been attacking her and was trying to tempt her. Now, when I got attacked by this Jezebel, there's 2 times I got attacked by this spirit, and the first time I had to go into the prayer room, which we had called the synagogue. It was a shed in the back. I had to hammer out prayers like crazy to overcome. And then the second time, I went upstairs to go pray again to overcome this thing, and I literally collapsed from the attacks. I dropped, like I literally dropped onto the ground, and I had to just hammer out warfare prayers and just pound it out, praying in tongues and so on. And Jesus showed me that the slime attacks that I had, this is what I was supposed to do with those. The slime attacks I mentioned at the beginning of this testimony video. But those were the last major attacks that I had gone through temptation-wise, and Jesus had really helped me, overcome them, and he delivered me through all of them. And whatever things I did stumble in, he did give me grace on how to deal with them. So, again, the reason for this video was to really just open up the door and open up people's minds to the kinds of temptations you may go through. I'm not saying that everyone has to go through these temptations. This is just to really just make you aware that once we start following Jesus, it's not the end. Like, it's not the end, man. It's actually it really is the beginning. And temptation is not supposed to be something that we're afraid of. It's not a setup for us to go to hell anymore, even though that's how Satan wants us to think. That's not how James told us to think. James told us to count it as joy. It's our time to shine, or it's our time to learn from mistakes. That's the best way to view it. Now, the next video that I'm going to go through, I'm going to rewind a little bit, and I'm going to go back to my experiences in church. I'm going to talk about how I was getting ready and getting set up to leave church after my time there had been finished. Jesus wanted me to move on to other things, which I considered way better than church anyway.